It's Tuesday, the 28th of June, 2016. I am Robin Yellow, and this is Techtasm episode 21. 3 arses in a row. And with me again, because nobody else is available, is Sir James Woodall.
You're going to miss me if all of a sudden somebody is available. There'll be some immense banter that you'll be missing out on. And
I know, I will be. And I'll also miss you when you go to Europe on holiday and aren't allowed back in.
Yes, true.
Well, dear listener, this week James and I will be looking at the Google phone, not the Nexus phone, the Google phone. Microsoft pays up 10 grand and more from Shenzhen Baili in a part 2 on last week's piece. We'll be judging these stories and some others to determine if they are techtasms, which are by our definition is a blend of tech for technology and tasm for phantasm, something that exists only in a person's mind. So, without further intro, let's get on with this show. Well, The Telegraph reported this week that Google is to step up smartphone wars with the release of its own handset. Now, apparently Google is planning this shake-up of the smartphone market by releasing its own handset in a move which would tighten its grip on mobile software and see it completely compete with the iPhone. Now, Google, of course, James, already develops the Android operating system, which is, of course, free to anybody to use, and endorses a range of phones made by partners such as LG and Huawei under the Google Nexus brand. Now, the new device, which should be released by the end of the year, according to a, quote, senior source by James Titcomb in The Telegraph, this new device will see Google take more control over the design, manufacturing, and software altogether. Does this sound plausible to you?
I'm not so sure. I mean, bringing out a phone, that's a big deal. It's not easy. And aren't they 10 years late to the party?
Well, yes, but you've got to remember, of course, that they bought Motorola before, so technically Motorola phones bought between 2010 and 2014 were Google phones. So it's not like they haven't done it, and it's also not like that they haven't made hardware before with their Pixel range.
Yeah, this is true. I mean, making a phone is just a big deal, and the Android space is pretty crowded with people who really know what they're doing. Take your Samsungs, LGs, HTCs of the world. They've got that nailed down. So I think Google are in for a bit of a shock. And if I may correct you, Android isn't free. It certainly isn't.
Oh.
It certainly isn't to Samsung, LG, and those guys.
Right.
Yeah, they have to pay Microsoft, and I think you have to pay to be part of the program that allows you to get the Play Store and so forth.
Now, of course, they pay Microsoft because Microsoft sued the bigger manufacturers for actual patent infringements in Android. So they get $5 a time, I think,
So would
from
Microsoft
Samsung.
collect from Google if Google makes its own Android phone?
That would be the irony upon ironies. Now, earlier this year, Google hired Rick Osterloh, the former president of Motorola, to lead this new hardware division in a sign of its growing ambitions. And company chief executive Sundar Pichai said last month that Google was, quotes, investing more effort into phones, although he said the company would continue to support the Google-backed Nexus smartphone. Now, by saying he's going to invest more effort and saying he will continue to support Nexus, surely the implication from that language is that something new is coming down the pike.
Yeah, so what do you think will be the difference between Nexus devices to a consumer and a Google device? Obviously, Nexus devices are manufactured by Acer and those kind of people. Well, and Samsung, I think, have done a few. So what's the difference? What's going to be the difference?
Yes. Well, I think the difference is I think they've always had ambitions in this space. So if you look at the Pixel Chromebook and now the Pixel C, which is a 10-inch or 9-inch Android tablet, again, Google branded, aluminium in design. It's got a very distinctive design with the Google colors in illuminated LEDs on the outside of it. I think they've always had a desire to make their own stuff, because you've got to remember that Apple's success is in the manufacture of hardware, or the design and manufacture of hardware and software to work together seamlessly to provide that ultimate smooth experience by optimizing the software around the hardware. And Google always has been a little bit hamstrung that it has to depend for that integration on third-party companies, which of course changes the experience a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. It feels a bit like a defensive move, and I don't know. As you say, they've tried mobile phones twice already with the Nexus range and by buying Motorola. I don't know. Third time's the charm? Hey.
Well, maybe. Would you buy one?
No.
You wouldn't buy any Android phone, would you?
No, of course not.
That's what makes this show so powerful, folks. So I'm going to call this one a reel, James. What do you think?
No, it's a reel, but it will flop.
Okay, so that's a Techtasm. That is a definition of a Techtasm, right?
Well, yeah, okay. So will it happen? Yes, but will it happen for reals? No, it will.
Okay. So you're calling it Techtasm because you think it's going to happen, but you think when it happens, it won't. It'll just be a flop.
Correct, because Google. What do Google know about getting supply chains up and running, and all the kind of things that Samsung and LG have really got nailed down, I think.
Well, but can I call you out on that one? They've made 3 Pixel branded devices, which are totally Google designed from the ground up. Who manufactures them? Well, I suppose who makes them? I suppose, Foxconn and Pegatron and, the usual array of insert Chinese company here. So they're all made in probably the same factory in China. But the Pixel devices have been designed from the ground up. So they've already, from their point of view, they've done this 3 times. But you're right. It is a new space because it's a phone, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a new space. They're only going to, how many are they going to have, right? It'll be a serious investment for them to make, a range of phones. And we remember when Apple first released their phone, they had one carrier. And in fact, it was just in the US. Google is a global brand. They need to do a lot on day one for this to work. I don't know. Come on.
You heard it first, folks. James calls this one a Techtasm.
So, Microsoft may pay you $10,000.
I'll take it.
So,
what do I have to do?
Install Windows 10.
Okay.
Lance Ulanoff in Mashable reports that a lady in California successfully sued Microsoft because it installed Windows 10 without her knowledge and supposed consent. And I think the reason she won is because the dialog box that encourages you to install Windows 10 is convoluted and confusing on purpose to therefore trick you into upgrading. And I think what's really interesting is the fact that Microsoft lost this. I think this could possibly open the floodgates. Have you got much experience with Windows 10?
Well, yes. And I upgraded, obviously the day it came out last year to really understand the process closely. And I've been very pleased with that experience.
Yes,
it seemed fine to me. Yeah, it looks good. I think it's definitely a good thing to do. The problem here is that this woman in California who was an estate agent, ran her business. She obviously had a finely tuned setup on Windows 7 or whatever she was using. And the Windows 10 upgrade bricked her computer. And there were 2 things at issue here. One, the fact that apart from when you said convoluted, James, can you just explain what you mean by convoluted?
Yeah, so effectively, when the dialog box appears to say, do you want to upgrade to Windows 10, and it gives you a suggested date for that, if you close that dialog box, you're not cancelling the update. So if the dialog box says it's going to upgrade on May the 10th, and you close the box, it's still going to upgrade on May the 10th. You have to click another button deep inside the box to change the schedule.
So reasonably, during her working day, she saw the pop-up,
Yep.
said, I either want to delay this I'm effectively batting it away.
Correct.
Without agreeing to anything. Next thing she knows, she turns her computer on and it's bricked.
Yeah, that's basically it. I mean, that's effectively what happened. And I can see why Microsoft are doing this, because, I mean, we all remember Windows XP refused to die. And I think the biggest challenge that Windows XP had was because Vista was cancelled and, redeveloped into, it was Longhorn, was cancelled, became Vista. XP ended up being around for about 7 years, which is an unprecedented amount of time for an operating system. So people got used to it and they liked it and they refused to loosen their grip. I mean, XP was a terrible OS. It was not designed.
Terrible OS? Hold on a minute. Rewind. XP was an awesome OS.
Well, it wasn't. You just used it for a long time. It's like, a comfortable jumper.
It was stable. It was fast.
No, it was not. It was terrible. It was built on top of Windows 2000. The kernel encouraged you to run in administrator mode, so any kind of virus can hop onto your machine. It was just awful. But
I must admit, it did oversee one of the worst times for security violations and the vectors for viruses.
And the main reason for that was because it didn't encourage developers to do things properly. It allowed you to get away with a lot of things. And the one thing that Vista did, which people hated but was for the right reason, was it stopped developers from doing things. I remember my sister installing a PC game that required administrator privilege. Why did a game require administrator privilege? It was being lazy. I'm on a rant. I'm winning.
Okay, but look, I'll tell you, sometimes when you've got a machine and it says you cannot proceed and use this app, this service, whatever it is, without saying okay to the sloppy programming, you just say okay to the sloppy programming. We accept risk in all our computing endeavors, or we accept inconvenience. So, you mentioned Vista. One of the features in Vista which provided that protection, which was explicit approval of every required privilege, was the thing which caused a problem not only with the users just saying yes, yes, yes to everything. They became blind to these messages, so it actually provided no extra layer of security because they saw the dialogue so many times they just pressed OK the whole time.
Yes, I agree. The first service pack of Vista got rid of a lot of those.
So what's happened here, this woman has closed this dialogue because it's getting in the way of her computing experience, and has paid the price for it. And obviously, Microsoft, by paying the $10,000, have accepted this, coughed up. And do they, litigious society that it is, does this now open them up to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people asking for their 10 grand?
I mean, we'll have to wait and see. It's very hard to police who did or who did not agree or disagree to this. But I
think if it's a little bit of bloodletting, they paid off this one particular person who's demonstrated that her business shut down for a week and there was nothing she could do about it. Well, I think that's fair enough and quite big of them. If it turns into a deluge, well, fair enough. But really, they should not have done this. It's very sneaky what they did. And they're unashamedly admitting that they made it confusing and convoluted so that people would upgrade. They said the greater goal was to get as many people onto Windows 10 as possible, and to make it confusing. Well, I understand why they did it. It doesn't mean that it isn't shady.
Absolutely. I think they went about it the wrong way. And, we're coming up to July 29th, which is when the free upgrade is going to be over. I think on my main work laptop, I'm holding off on upgrading. I'm on Windows 8.1, which isn't great, to be honest. But the inconvenience of sitting there for ages and knowing that things might break, I think, worries me slightly. I'd much rather reformat, but then you lose a day doing that.
Yeah, I understand. And often it comes down when you don't care what operating system you've got. You're just doing your job on it. You don't want the new features. You don't need an extra faster 10 seconds on boot time. You don't need slicker this, slicker that. And actually you balance that against the possibility of something breaking like you. It feels like you're having a gun held to your head. And as the date approaches, because Microsoft want to get you onto this roller coaster, or at least the train tracks of Windows 10 and its continuous patching and upgrades, you do feel a little bit bullied by it. So
Definitely,
You
but
know,
I have to say, I do like Windows 10, and some of these things that are coming down the line. So, for example, we spoke about a few episodes back, bits of Ubuntu coming there, and and so forth. And the Cortana features are really great. It's a great OS. It's just inconvenience. I don't know. It concerns me. But I have to ask you this, Mr. Yellow: is there a question here? I don't know what the question is. I'm confused.
I don't know. You're doing this article.
Okay. Let's just move on. Nothing to see here, folks. Next story.
Google was reported in Ars Technica, the first of our three arses, by Ron Amardi, our favourite journalist, that Google's new two-factor authentication system just requires you to tap yes to log in. Now, you know what two-factor is, James?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea that an external device of some description can confirm you are who you say you are. Sometimes it's a plastic fob you might get with your bank. I guess it's an application on your smartphone in this case, and so forth. I guess the desire is, correct me if I'm wrong, if somebody has your password to a service, they're still not getting in.
Well, let me try and explain it by describing Google Authenticator. So Google Authenticator is an app which runs on iOS and Android and is currently a second factor. So if I know the password when I log in on my laptop for my Google account, and I've got a one-time code off Google Authenticator, which basically gives me a 6-digit code, which I then enter into the box in a sort of second password that I add in, Google then knows that it's me, right? Because I've got my phone and I know my password. Now that's called two-factor, one-factor, two-factor. Now what they've done is they've said, well, actually, as long as you got the phone, that's the important thing. So the second factor here, this new method is called Google Prompt, which all it does is it pops up on your phone a prompt which says, are you trying to log on to your laptop, Robin? And you just tap yes. You don't have to read a code out, try to remember it, and then transcribe it. You just press yes. You tap yes to confirm on your iOS or Android phone, and then the login occurs.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It really
sounds
smart.
pretty good to me.
But, I mean, it's part of a wider thing, really, which is the reason I popped this story up last week, which is passwords are dodgy. It's nice to see companies doing something about it, because when the password leaks happen, the amount of people with ABCDE, password 123, QWERTY, 1234556, it's still 2016. Those are still some of the most popular passwords. Yeah,
and passwords generally are insecure. I mean, we've got to get rid of them, don't we, James?
Absolutely, of course. I mean, keyloggers are ubiquitous and not hard to install.
Now, what's a keylogger for our listener?
It is a piece of software, or if you're super advanced, a piece of hardware that can detect what your keyboard is typing. So by doing that, software further down the line can detect patterns, and from that deduce when you were typing in a password or not. So it's quite scary stuff, and it's a nice preferred way of hackers getting your password, because why bother breaking encryption if they can just use your password?
Well, exactly. And I think anything which gives that second factor means that, you can't be hacked from China, you can't be hacked from Finland, you can't be hacked from Brussels, you can't be hacked from India. You need to have your own phone in your hands to log in on a new computer, and that can't be bad. Just go out and do it. Don't think about it. Go and read about it. Invest 15 minutes of your time to protect your Google account. And by the way, two-factor authentication isn't something just for Google accounts. You can also get it on other systems, can't you, like Dropbox?
Yes, and World of Warcraft.
Even the venerable World of Warcraft.
Well, actually, you joke, but it was a big deal in the late 2000s. I may or may not have spent a huge portion of my time playing World of Warcraft.
Late 2000s?
In the late 2000s.
In the future?
It was 2010s then. In the late noughties. In the late noughties, I playing a lot of Warcraft by mistake. Actually, I loved it.
By yourself?
And yeah, of course. And it was a big thing for hackers to break into your account, steal all your gold, and then sell it. And Blizzard brought out these little key fobs, two-factor authentication key fobs. They've now got a mobile app, but yeah, it was crazy. It was a big deal because people were just people's lives literally were being spent on this game, and then the precious virtual gold was being stolen. It was crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, while it's just your data, that data has value to people who want to impersonate you and rip off your bank account and take money off you. So just do it. I mean, I have a U2F a USB key, which I plug in and then tap the button on top of it. It's a tiny, tiny little USB key, and that gets me in. But if you want to set up Google Prompt, James, go to the security section of your Google account settings. To do that, you just Google it, Google account settings. Go to the security section, click on two-step verification, and there should be a new option called Google Prompt. And it works on both Android and iOS. Literally, you log on, it says, consult your phone, you see your phone, you tap OK, you're in. It's super smooth. I think taking the friction out of the login process while preserving the security is good news. Everyone, just go out and do it.
I will look at it on my iPhone now. But is there a question? So I guess the question is, are we at the end of passwords?
Well, unfortunately, so the security here is provided by two factors, 2 bits of information or 2 things which are unique to me. Okay, so the password on its own is not enough, but that in combination with the second factor is enough. So actually, this concept of having 2 weak things rather than one strong thing, like a long, long password, is better. So it could be that actually a face detect, some kind of 3D face detect, or an iris scan, or some kind of device, USB stick that you lick, something that's easy for you to do. In the same way on your phone, James, where you use a thumbprint to get on. Something like that. Of course, the problem is that laptops generally, and that's what we're talking about here, isn't it? Logging into your laptop. Laptops don't have thumbprint scanners, iris readers, and licking devices, DNA analyzers. Therefore, you're stuck with that password combo. But I think this is better. I think there's a lot of work and thought going into this. Therefore, we will get more frictionless logins in the future.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we move on?
Let's go for it.
So, we like to talk about VR here. And
is this the second arse?
This is the second arse, lined up carefully next to the first arse.
That's 2 arses.
Sam Makovech.
Arguably presenting this show.
Yes. Yes.
Carry on. Sorry, James. I'm sorry.
Has written about Oculus. Now, Oculus, of course, it's I'd say it's a popular VR. I wouldn't say it's the most popular, but I don't know exactly. But they've been doing a few things lately to upset some of the user base, and one of those things has been locking down Oculus games so they can't run on other VR headsets. And, in particular, the HTC Vive. So, over the past couple of weeks, there's been a bit of a cat and mouse game going on, whereby a couple of very clever hackers have managed to break down the DRM, the digital rights management, so the software can run on the Vive, and then Oculus have then been coming up and patching it, and then they've been doing it again, and then so forth. There's been this back and forth, but all of a sudden, Oculus have taken it out. So now, without restriction, you can run the games. I mean, you still need a kind of proxy shim layer between the game and the device, but
what's a proxy shim layer?
I'm just making the words up, to be honest. I guess the shim is probably the right thing. Effectively, like a translation code, so the game designed for Oculus runs on this other headset. So I guess It's a bit like how Xbox 360 games can run on your Xbox One. Can PS3 games run on PS4s?
No, they can't.
No? Okay, I knew that. I was just bringing that up.
They can on Xbox One, of course. There are some compatibility, I think, isn't there, with the older games?
Yeah, some more are being added every week. Thank you, Microsoft. But
I think the architecture of the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One were similar. They were based on an Intel chip design.
The Xbox 360 was PowerPC.
Oh, was it? I'll take that all back.
You should.
Those clever people at Microsoft have just done a better job than Sony.
Yeah, the first Xbox, which was not the Xbox One, the Xbox number one was a 700 megahertz Intel, and then the Xbox One, the third Xbox, is an Intel. But yeah, the second one's PowerPC. In fact, the prototypes for that, this is completely off topic, was MacBooks, Mac Pros, Apple Mac Pros. Believe it or not, because they were all PowerPCs. Anyway, sorry, we're going off topic here. So, long story short, Oculus have taken out the DRM. And what was really interesting is Oculus executives a week before this spoke to ours in defense of this DRM strategy, saying, it's a really important thing for them to do. So, what's going on?
Well, what's interesting about Oculus is that it is funded by Mark Zuckerberg, and he bought it for 19 unicorns? Or was it 2 unicorns?
No,
it was 2 unicorns, wasn't it? It was WhatsApp that was 19. Anyway, he's bought it for billions of dollars, and it's been allowed to do its own thing at its own speed without having to turn a profit or make money. And this DRM war looked a little bit childish, really, because basically, the Oculus and the Vive are both based on a gaming PC on the back end, and to needlessly put some DRM into that system just to preserve your own tiny bit of the market kind of looked a little bit childish. So it could be actually they've realized that in order to create a groundswell of support for VR, they have to coexist in a world with Vive.
I mean, would this be akin to, say, Samsung stopping LG from running a particular Android application that Samsung have made? I mean, because effectively LG and Samsung make pretty much the same phone, right?
Yeah.
But they have their own bloatware. So, it is really strange. The Oculus project, it feels a bit, I don't know, weird. As they say, they've got a blank check. They can do what they want. They've made some really, really strange decisions, like the fact that the hardware you need is so ridiculously powered that your average PC will struggle to run the games.
Yes.
I think, fine, that's really great. I get that. But the Samsung Oculus, attachment you get for the Galaxy S5 is pretty good.
Yes.
In fact, I saw it. I was at a customer site last week, looking at it for a 3D helicopter cockpit, and it was pretty damn realistic. So I think they've done some really strange things just to, I don't know, maybe this is what happens when you get a blank check. I don't know. Well,
it could be. And of course, the danger with not having a target to make money is that you do become a bit complacent or a little bit academic-y, perhaps trying to perfect something which doesn't need perfecting from the market. I think if you want to look at a fully commercially driven VR system, you don't have to look any further than the PlayStation VR headset. That thing's being made to a price, to a performance spec, to be sold at $400 to people who own PS4s, which is a market of what, 30 million?
Yes, yeah, it is, yeah.
So I think both Oculus and Vive are really looking at the pro market for the big spenders, and I think they recognize that this is by definition going to be a niche market because you need that gamer PC for it to work. Therefore, actually, I think there's nothing wrong with allowing, removing the DRM and allowing the systems to work on both, just to get them kickstart the market. And I'm sure that's the meeting that they had.
Yeah, you're probably right. And what they should do is put something in the hardware that HTC don't have to say, yeah, our games are run on HTC, but we've got a better thingy. That's technical. That, the games will just run really well. Like, so maybe they've got a better sound card or,
Well, by allowing open competition, it forces the development teams to produce the best system. Because if the same game can run on both, then it's an arms race. So one of the things that made the PlayStation 4 sell better than the Xbox One was just games performed better on it. There were less frame drops, there was higher resolution, and for the hardcore gamer at the top end, for platform game, is platform, that's the wrong thing. Maybe that's the wrong word. Anyway, that was important to preserve that experience. And I think maybe there's some Palmer lucky, isn't it, at Oculus has maybe had to answer a tough question from Mark Zuckerberg, which is your system up to it? Can it compete with the Vive? Yes, no. If it can, then you shouldn't be afraid. So,
absolutely, and also it means that we know how Google are now encouraging their subsidiaries to actually start running like a business. Maybe he's got resource constraints, and Mark Zuckerberg may have said, I wasn't in the room, you've got 100 people working on this, you've got 5 people breaking DRM. Why? They've probably still got a lot to do, I suspect. I mean, I would hope there's an Oculus 2 around the corner that the team should be working on.
Well, is there a question in here, James?
I think the question is there a future for DRM? Because it's been around for a very long time. All the big players have played around with it. I think even Google have done bits with DRM as well. What's going on here with DRM? Or is it finally dead?
Well, let's hope so. All I can say is that DRM is a techtasm. It's something which should never have come into existence. It's something I don't really like. I don't understand why companies would do it, because they're afraid to compete on pure functionality and performance, and they like lock-in, and lock-in delivers shareholder value. So I think it's a necessary evil, but nobody likes it.
I agree. Let's move on to the third arse.
The third arse is from Tom Mendelsohn. Sweden is trialling electrified highways for trucks. Yes, you heard that right. They're calling it the world's first e-highway. It's a 1.2-mile stretch of road in Sweden that's being used as a test site for battery-powered trucks that are charged as they drive beneath overhead wires. I'm not kidding you. The kind of overhead wires you would see on a high-speed electric train, they've got over a stretch of road. And this truck has got this gigantic electric apparatus sticking out the top of it, pushing up onto the wires. Now, this technology has been developed by Siemens in partnership with the Swedish truck firm Scania, and it's claiming that this e-highway is twice as efficient as internal combustion engines, cutting energy consumption in half. Well, that's fair enough. That's only because petrol engines have half the efficiency of electric motors. It doesn't mean it's any better for the environment. But Siemens apparently is also developing another e-highway in California, this time on behalf of Volvo, aiming to start tests in 2017. Now, it's a wonderful picture, James, isn't it, there? But it does look a bit odd, like going back to the trolley buses in the 1950s.
Yeah, definitely. I was just wondering, is it a real picture? I think it actually might.
It is. It's a real picture, and I thought somebody's photoshopped it, haven't they? But it's real.
It is. And for our listener, what I'll do is I'll put it on Facebook, so you can all see this just afterwards. What's really interesting, I mean, obviously the technology of a pantograph, the whole electric thing, is pretty old. Anyway, I think it was from the 50s.
They're old pictures they look like buses, but they ran on rails in the road, and had these electric. Well, they were called trams, weren't they? Yeah,
absolutely. And in fact, when I was in Latvia with my good lady wife 2-3 years ago, they still have buses that do exactly that.
But do they have rubber pneumatic tyres?
Yeah. So
that's called a trolley bus, isn't it? Yeah. So it's like a regular bus. It just takes its power from overhead cables.
But although what was different about those is they were actually fixed to the lines ahead. So they could steer to avoid obstacles, but they couldn't go more than a few meters away from the lines. Okay. So it was a little bit different. But I think the concept of this is absolutely brilliant. The interesting thing about this is the electricity can be generated through renewable means. Okay, so you could have solar farms, you can have wind farms, whatever. Yeah. Hydroelectric, whatever, which is fantastic. It means it's completely green because, of course, one of the problems on highways is the air quality around them is just disgusting. Yeah. It's the absolute way forward. And of course, when you're slowing down or at traffic jams or whatever, you're going to be using less power. You don't have engines just sort of going.
Well, also, that power that comes through the cables can be used to charge the batteries up in the truck. So it's not just the distance that it's actually traveling under the wires. It can also get a recharge out of it. And it says here that the sensor system allows it to couple and uncouple with the electric overhead lines at speeds of up to 56 miles an hour.
Brilliant. I mean, that's what trucks go anyway, although in the US they go a lot faster, but yeah.
Well, in a thrusting modern move, the UK government indicated in August 2015 that it would like to try an electrified roadway, but hasn't made any solid moves yet.
No, but it's good to know that we'd like to do it. That's really good. That's very
nice. We're waiting for the European Parliament to tell us when we can start.
Definitely, of course. But what's really great about this is the European continent is certainly moving towards this. The railway that was unveiled was opened in Switzerland a few weeks ago. The advantage of that is, I think they said, and I'm quoting an unreliable source here, what the trucks now, I think they have to use the railway if they're going from a certain point to a certain point. You know, if you're going from, say, Italy to France or whatever it is, you have to use this railway. And that's the only reason why people actually voted in Switzerland for it to be built in the first place. So,
very good.
So the idea being that you've got a train which produces no emissions whatsoever. You've got carrying all these lorries which are now no longer using all these emissions. Of course, they're going to be diesel at either end, but when we start building up these networks, it's brilliant. Especially when we start talking about convoys as well. The world is an exciting place.
Yeah, nice one. So what are you calling it then? Techtasm?
I'd love for this to be a real. I hope this is a real.
But it's a Techtasm, isn't it? I've called this one a Techtasm. We're split on this one, James. We will never agree. Tell me we've got some light relief before we close the show.
I appreciate we're on 36 minutes at the moment. What I will say is, do you remember last week when we were talking about how Apple lost a patent against a company, this strange company, Shenzhen Baili? Well, Mac Rumors, in fact, the day after we recorded last Wednesday, did a bit of digging, the Wall Street Journal did a bit of digging, and it turns out that Shenzhen Baili, or their parent company Digione, have pretty much collapsed well before the lawsuit. And they've not been in the mobile phone market in China for nearly a year. So just to take this back a second, Apple lost a patent dispute to a company that doesn't exist.
That is mental. They actually show a nice little picture, don't they, here, of the iPhone 6 and the Shenzhen Baili 100C. I mean, they don't look anything like each other.
They don't. They really, really don't. But it just shows the political...
Yeah, it's politics.
Absolutely, 100%. But... China...
Well, we called it first, didn't we, on the show? We said it was a load of politics.
We absolutely did. So, the world will be taking, listener of the world...
They'll be reporting this in The Guardian tomorrow morning, I think. Sources close to the matter.
That's exactly it. Oh, dear. Well, anyway, so the light relief is, Christ, Apple were sued and lost by a company that doesn't even exist. Brilliant. It just says it all, really, doesn't it?
Well, that is all for this week, folks. You can find us at facebook.com/Techtasm. Subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or Feedburner, and contact us at feedback@techtasm.com. Go on, send us an email, please. If you are subscribed on iTunes, we do ask you to leave us some stars, and if there's 5 of them, we love you more. We record every Tuesday at 2100 BST GMT, so watch out for next week's show. This is me, Sir Robin Yellow.
And me, Mr. James Woodall.
Asking the question, is it real, or is it just a Techtasm?